ladies and gentlemen, coming to you live from the Scattered Chaos podcast room. It's the Scattered Chaos podcast. Today's host, Dave Uziel, Mr. Worldwide, with a broken down old man, Jeff Downs, as his guest, with a good story, but a somewhat sad story, and also kind of uplifting. Let's have some fun today.
Wow. Whoa, this is new. Dude, every time you get on here, dude, you like surprise me with something else. First the music.
That was him.
I know. Yalla Habibi, let's get this rolling kind of thing, you know? That's my boy Tariq in the back. He's
T-Money.
T-Dog. And then I get this like cool little intro. Oh, wow.
Oh, we're just messing around today.
Dude, we need to start stepping this up if we're going to go worldwide.
Well,
and Joe Rogan's going to be competition. I mean,
what's the dude, Michael, what's his name? The UFC announcer guy?
Yeah,
I can't think of his name.
Remember
See if he'll guest star on and do an intro for us.
Yeah, just like a famous one.
That'd be awesome, dude.
So, welcome everybody. Like he said, we're back in the Scattered Chaos podcast. I'm Dave Uziel. I'm here with again Jeff Downs. Really excited about this podcast. I just want to preface: this is going to be a hard one. Obviously, you know, Jeff was a police officer for many years, started at a young age, and unfortunately went through a traumatic incident that ended the life of a young gentleman that, we send our prayers to their family, obviously. So this podcast is not going to be easy to listen to, but it is a story that needs to be told. Similar situations that other people have had deserve to be told, their story to be told, not only for their own ability to kind of let things go, but also tell a story to help maybe other officers who might be going through the same situation. So, Jeff, thank you for being here with me again.
My pleasure, brother.
My brother. So let's kind of get straight into it. I mean, give us the background. Tell us a little bit, where you grew up, that kind of stuff, so that the fans know what's going on.
Yeah. Born and raised here in the area. I'm a Bruno boy, San Bruno. We don't go very far. No. Now I live in South San Francisco. Again, didn't go very far away from the home roots. I went to school all locally here, parochial school most of my life. I went to College of San Mateo and got a 2-year degree. And after that, it was kind of funny. I started off as like, I'm going to be a drafter, an architect. That's going to be my vibe. Then I figured out that math is not my thing. So we switched to...
How fast was that?
That was about half a semester. And then I switched to business. I took maybe one semester of business, and I just kind of it just didn't click. So while I was in school, I was working at Orchard Supply Hardware, which is an old hardware store in Millbrae. It's now Outdoor Supply Hardware or something.
Was like where the KFC is?
Yeah.
Oh, I know exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
So during that time, I was there for 10 years. Met my wife there.
Wow.
But during that time, I did loss prevention stuff.
Okay.
So in that process, this is how small of a world it is. I met Millbrae officers, one of which is Greg's dad, Mike.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from the Overwatch Collective, Greg Grogan, and a couple other officers. So in my dealings with arresting shoplifters, I met the officers, got kind of interested, went on a couple of ride-alongs, and that was kind of the beginning of it.
Who was your, if we talk about like your inspiration?
Dave Chucuti.
Dave Chucuti.
Mike, Rich Dixon, guys who, old school, old school, Tom Allen. These are the guys who I knew from Millbrae PD primarily. That was a good time. Those were good guys, and they were tearing it up out there. So it really gave me even in Little Millbrae, they were out there looking for stuff. It was fun.
No, they trust me. I remember growing up in Millbrae, and
other than chasing kids around that were drinking in parks and stuff. Danny, yeah.
Danny Singson will be always engraved in my brain because I had a little Honda Civic, and he really was into the, getting us for the loud exhaust, modified windows, loudspeakers.
Yeah,
so sure. I remember the Millbrae. So obviously you Orchard Supply, then what happened?
Started taking classes, did really well. It really clicked with me. And then I became a reserve officer for the city of San Carlos.
Okay.
So another sleepy little town, but I applied everywhere to be a reserve. At that time, 400 people looking for spots, whether full time or, or reserve.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy how many people were looking for spots, and I was lucky enough to get hired by San Carlos. Cliff Gerst was the chief.
Ooh.
Cliff went to high school with my dad. Such a small world.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah. Big Cliff. He was great. Great chief. Did that for about 5 years and wasn't getting hired full time because of the competition out there.
Mm-hmm.
Was testing everywhere. Decided to put myself through the police academy.
Okay.
So, good friend of mine, Gary Whitmer, he was a reserve with me in San Carlos. He got hired by Eureka PD, way up
north,
God's country.
Yeah, that is God's country.
Literally.
Yeah.
Got hired up there, and I said, "Gosh, there's an academy up there, College of the Redwoods." It was the cheapest because I was paying for it myself,
Right.
and it was the shortest. It was only 17 weeks.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, "Let's go." Gary said, "Just move in with me. Don't pay me rent. It's all good. You gotta get an extra room." So
that's dope.
yeah, I went up there. That was an interesting 17 weeks. I'm
Right.
not kidding. It was crazy up there, dude.
Yeah.
It was
So like, give me some
different.
stories.
Oh, the first night I was up there, we went downtown. It was like New Year's weekend, and the downtown is really cute. And at one point it was hustle bustle. Now it's just desolate up there. I don't know how it is right now. This is 30 years ago now, but it was bad at
Really?
the time. Yeah, a lot of homelessness, a lot of drug use up there. Really bad, really, really bad. But it rained every day in Eureka. It rained every day. I'm not kidding. Every day. And then it would be nice, and then it would rain, and then it'd be nice. It was every day up there. It was crazy.
Just how it was.
Yeah. But Gary was a good influence on me because Eureka PD, they rocked.
Did they?
Yeah. It was a lot like Daly City.
Oh, really?
Call up there. Yeah.
There's a lot of drugs.
A lot of bad stuff up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even 30 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. No, it was bad. He came home. He was always exhausted, that kid, working graves. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you finished the 17 weeks?
Yep. Finished that. Graduated. During that time, Millbrae PD and Burlingame were fighting for me.
Okay.
I interviewed again with both of them. Burlingame just happened to Tom Mariscolo, who you might remember.
I do.
Tom gave me a good sales pitch and told me why I should come there, and I did. So
What
my
year
heart was
that?
with Millbrae because I was riding along with them. Good friend of mine, Gabby, was there.
Gabby,
Gabby.
Of course.
He's still with the SO.
Good dude.
Gabby was upset at me that I didn't come over. Chucuti was upset at me that I didn't come over, but they understood, more opportunity. So
For sure.
started with Burlingame in late 95, 96.
Okay.
And
I was still in high school, just so we
thanks. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
I was actually 15 years old.
Oh,
so
thanks.
not rubbing it in.
That's
or
great.
anything
I
like
appreciate that
No,
very
man,
much.
It's all love.
Mhm.
That's,
That's why these gray hairs.
Yeah,
show up.
exactly.
Yeah.
I have way more. That's the worst part about this. And I have no hair. So I'm making fun of
that's
you,
a choice,
but I'm the
buddy.
one fucked.
I love it. I love it.
All right, so 95, 96,
Yeah.
you start your career.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, the first couple years. First of all, let's go through, everybody knows FTO is
Jesus.
the worst, what was it, 12 weeks, 16 weeks? How do you
I think it
remember?
was 16, right?
Okay. I for anybody who doesn't know anything about FTO program, it's a field training officer program that you have somebody who's riding with you, senior officers training you, kind of teaching you the ropes. Now, I won't talk about my 3 experiences because it's going to be really funny and bad at the same time, but I can just tell you that everybody has a different experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And most of the time you have one FTO you fucking hate
Yep.
with a passion, and you wish that they rolled out of the car every time you made a turn. And then you have one FTO who's like the guy who literally changes your whole your whole demeanor and teaches you kind of the true feelings without embedding their own personal perspective.
I had that very description.
Right.
Yeah, it's so true for everybody in the business.
Do you remember your 3 FTOs?
Oh, for sure. Jim Potter. Well, my primary was Tim Murphy.
Okay, great.
So
guy.
Murph was, Murph.
solid.
He's got a legend. His legend precedes him and follows him around.
Yes.
Murph was amazing.
Yeah.
That was the guy who I wanted to be. So he was my primary. Secondary was Roger Andre on Graves. You remember Roger?
Yeah, of course.
And then Potter was kind of my tertiary
Okay.
/ I don't know, kind of guy that helped me through everything.
Got
So just 3 broadly, vastly different
Very
people.
personality.
Vastly
Yeah,
different.
Yeah.
Murph was like, let's go. Every rock you see, let's turn it over. Every tree you see, shake it.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That was the dude who I learned how to be a street cop from, and he was amazing, my primary.
Yep.
Roger was more like, we're on graveyards. let's take it easy.
At
Let's go find some
turn
stuff.
it down.
Yeah, turn it down a little bit. We're good. I've been here for 75 years, so we don't need to tear it up. Roger was great. To this day, we're still friends.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, and then Potts was day shift in our particular agency at that time was rather funny in terms of how day shift rolled.
Okay.
Senior guys. I won't name them all by name. But
you know who you are.
Yeah. Come on, guys. The day would generally start with a meeting at the Hyatt House for breakfast.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be our briefing after briefing. That lasted a few times, and as a new rookie cop, I was like just sitting there kind of sort of, what are we doing? Is this okay? That ended pretty quickly when a sergeant happened to see all of our vehicles parked in the parking lot one day.
Is that when the rule changed to only 2 people at a time?
It was definitely a rule change. Yeah. So it was just a good broad experience.
Sure.
Murph was working swings at the time, so when I was on swings with him, I can remember so many great calls with him. He taught me the most. Everybody had their piece of me, if you will.
Yeah.
As you know, you take their tools and put them in your box and use what you
Figure
need
out
to
what
use
works for you.
Yeah. But I'd say I was trained and learned the most from Murph.
Yeah.
On every aspect. And at the time, he was studying to become a motor cop. So then we were all traffic oriented, which is probably why I became a motor cop at some point.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
So
you got through FTO.
Yeah. Quickly on time. Good marks. Came out with 7s pretty much my last DOR.
Yeah.
Or not DOR. What was it?
DR.
What do they call it?
Daily.
Yeah, DOR. Daily observation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That made me proud from Murph, with good marks. So,
That's
yeah. Good. And then, seriously, it felt like a couple months, and I was applying to be a canine officer.
So it was that quick?
Yeah, I got my dog when I was still on probation, which was unheard of at the time.
Now, did you guys have other dogs at the time?
We did,
Okay.
but Jim Ford had a dog. You know Jimmy.
Mr. Ford.
Jimmy was my cohort as a canine officer on Graves.
Okay.
And then eventually became my sergeant, which is great. And then eventually when I became a sergeant, he was working opposite me. So, that's a long story. It's another story we'll get to.
Yeah, so you got the dog?
Yeah.
What was the dog's name?
Kai.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about him.
Oh, my God. 80-pound, black and tan shepherd. Amazing dog. Dope dog was his thing. They call him the nose.
Yeah.
Guys would call and say, hey, do you want the nose to get some work? Come on over.
Yeah.
He was a really good dog. He got sick after almost 7 years, 6.5 years we had him. He got sick one day, started losing his hair, losing weight, didn't know what it was, took him to the vet. He had basically a torsion issue with his large intestine and colon.
Okay.
So tried to save him, couldn't save him, had to put him down. That was devastating. But being a canine officer, best job ever.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Most work you'll ever put into something, I think, in terms of having to train him and yourself, but the most rewarding when you see your dog track a suspect. I have a good story out of the first month or so that I was a canine officer. Coming off of graveyards, Millbrae PD had a suspect that was peeking in the windows and exposing himself, and it was up on the top of the hill by 280, and they didn't really know about dogs. They didn't have a dog program at the time. They were trying to. Called, said, anybody have a dog? I was getting off work. I heard the call. I said, let's go. Jammed up the hill, met with them, and started tracking through this wooded area. And I see a piece of clothing. The dog hits it. He's on a long line and then jams down the hill to a drainage canal.
Okay.
And as we're tracking, he stops, kind of looks to his right, and kind of lets out a little growl and oof. And I turn, and there's this guy covered in brush and branches, hiding from us, completely naked.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, that doesn't fit.
Right.
And, we start ordering him out. Another officer came through a fence rather than over a fence to cover me, which was amazing. Yeah, it's easier. It doesn't hurt, really.
It doesn't hurt at all.
And then we hooked him up, but that was our first big call. We had many great calls through the years,
Any
too.
good bites?
I never got a bite with him.
No? Was he a good bite?
Yeah, he was a great dog. Most of my work was in other towns.
Yeah.
It's crazy. In Burlingame, it's
it's a little bit here and there. You get probably some birds here and there. A
lot of dope work in Burlingame with him. Lots of dope work.
Yeah, from the San Mateo side coming?
Mostly. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I never got a bite with him. That's my one thing. Close. Had to call him off a couple times during foot pursuits because other cops would get in the way.
Damn.
But, that's the way it
rule,
goes. I had 2 potentials.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I sent them.
Really?
And 2 cops get in the way as they're, coming out of nowhere. So I have to call them
yell
off.
them.
Unless, I wanted to let the dogs eat the cops. But,
we
it happened.
We don't need any.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to kind of go off track a little bit
Yeah.
because we're talking about canines. I mean, obviously, I don't know if this is a federal thing they're talking about, but they're, lately in the news, they're talking about not allowing dogs to be police dogs anymore.
Right.
Not having no canines. Is this a California thing or is this a federal thing?
It's federal.
It is a federal thing.
I think California put something out there that they were trying to get that as well as a use of force situation.
Right. So give me your opinion, I mean, if you don't mind, just because I have my own. I mean, obviously, I think, and I'll just say mine straight up, I think police dogs are probably the best tool any agency has if they have them on their teams. I think it's one for safety. It gives us a distance from suspects, and especially when searching. We're only human.
Yeah.
A dog's nose is what they say 10 times better than, or even more.
I've heard more.
Yeah, and so imagine if he can smell something that's behind a wheel well or inside a glove box that we can't see it. Those are things that that's a tool that we could never master ourselves.
Yeah.
But along with that is there are. And we can go into the politics of California right now. And I don't really want to.
That's a rabbit hole, bro.
That's a rabbit hole. I'll probably fail.
Yeah.
Get canceled. And
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I only have 4.
Not
three,
yet.
3 episodes. Not even 4. I don't want to be canceled yet.
Yeah.
One of the things is like, obviously, no police officer wants to hurt anybody. That's
right.
There may be 1 or 2 that have bad apples in anything.
Right.
I can't speak for them, but when I was working in Daly City and we had our canine, it was always nice to know that if we had a foot pursuit, we had something that was faster and even smarter than us.
Right.
Because I believe those dogs are so smart and intelligent and seeing things that we can't see.
100%. Smelling things that we can't see.
Yeah.
That's the key.
That's the key thing. And
right.
It was important. And I mean, I saw a lot of, foot pursuits that turned into a dog, and it was a powerful thing for me. So I'm totally against it, but give me your intake on it.
No, I would say it's a huge mistake to take that tool away. There's so many different rules of thinking about use of force. In my opinion, that dog, if it's a good dog, is a de-escalation tool. Okay.
True.
I had a rather large Polynesian male who squared off to fight with me one night, who was not afraid of anything. And I ended up drawing my firearm and started commanding him down to the ground, and he was saying, "I'm not doing it." So I popped my door and I called my dog to the side, and he looked at the dog and he says, "I give up." Yeah. So after I hooked him up, I said, "Why'd you give up?" And the dog came out. He goes, "Well, I know when you can use that gun." He goes, "I don't know when you can use that dog, though." I'll never forget that, dude.
Wow.
Like the deterrent
for sure.
of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the use of force, canines can de-escalate situations just by their mere presence.
Yeah.
They can speed up a situation, and more importantly, it's hard to say as a handler because it was my greatest fear. But if it's the difference between a dog and a handler, a human,
right,
it's going to be the dog.
Yeah,
it has to be the dog.
Right.
That's not a decision that you hesitate on, and
right.
That's the greatest fear as a canine handler. And I see these postings every day of dogs getting killed in line of duty, and I admire them so much, but it breaks my heart.
Of course,
it just breaks
animals.
my heart. Yeah, it's almost like I grieve harder for the dogs, and I hate to say that, but I know the bond that's there.
Right.
That dog, my dog Kai, went everywhere with me.
Yeah.
Everywhere, more than my family. I would take special trips to Lake Tahoe and go out to the water or into the snow so he could play and he could have fun.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing thing to have the dog, to be able to have the dog's presence. The barking de-escalates people, de-escalates tensions. I can search a warehouse with my dog in 5 minutes versus a half an hour with a couple officers. There's just so many things that they're valuable for. And I think as politicians, you need to talk to the people who do this every single day and understand the value of it versus what the public perception is of it, because the public perception is wrong. They only see that dog biting the bad guy.
Of course.
They don't know why and what we can and can't do.
Thank you, media.
Well, yeah, the media makes it so sensational that it's bad in most people's eyes.
Yeah.
I was sued in federal court, and so was my dog for a narcotics search. How does that happen?
do
You sue my dog? Yeah, literally, he was named in the lawsuit.
He is not allowed to eat for 14 months.
Right.
That's his punishment.
And the judge was like, "This is frivolous. Get out of here."
Yeah.
And I was like,
Stupid.
"Thank you, Your Honor." It's like, what are we doing? We're wasting taxpayers' money here.
Right.
You know, the dog did its job.
Right.
I couldn't believe it, but
That's
they're
kinda crazy.
invaluable.
They're-
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really excited because in the next couple episodes, we're going to have Marty Mahon on
Yeah.
here.
Marty.
If you don't know who Marty Mahon is, he is the co-owner
Yeah.
of Trident Canines, which is a company here in the Bay Area that trains canine dogs.
Yeah.
For local police departments and some not even local. There's some that are. I think Lathrop has a couple new ones.
Yeah, he's got a pretty broad reach now.
Yeah, so he's been doing this, and the dogs that he's developed are, to me, probably the best I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
In the sense of what they do for the job. When it comes to, the whole training and biting, I mean, he's got them really, in line. I think the other part of it is the handler.
Yeah.
The handler,
Oh, yeah.
it takes, the dog could do everything you want it to do, but if the handler's not there and not present with the dog, one of the things that I'm learning now with Zero is, it goes down the leash.
Oh, yeah.
And we've talked about this a couple times personally. Like, when I'm having a bad day and I'm walking with Zero, he feels it.
Right.
And like when I'm happy, he's tail wagging, all excited to do things. So it really is the leash that controls, the human
For sure.
that's holding that leash. And you brought up the situation with the Polynesian. And the first thought I had is, man, you pop the door, the dog, from what I know through my own experience, the dog automatically is supposed to run to wherever you tell it to run.
Yes.
So it's really hard for me to think that Kai was so smart, which I know he was,
Right.
because all the stories you told me, that he came straight to your side.
Yeah, he came straight to a heel. If I were in a physical confrontation, that would have been an automatic. He would have come through the front window out the front of my car versus me popping the door. We have an electronic door popper that we can pop the back door to let the dog out.
Okay.
But if I'm in a handler assault situation where I'm hands-on with somebody, he's going to come and he's going to eat that person.
And it's just because he's watching you the whole time you're out of the
His job is to protect me. 100%. 1,000,000% loyalty. It's incredible. It's incredible. You've seen it.
No, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of imagining, and maybe some of our viewers are, trying to imagine, this dog who's 80 pounds. And if you don't know, in the car, the window's like, what?
Maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
this, maybe this. And, I've always watched when I was up at, even in Burlingame and Daly City, when we were on traffic stops and the canine handlers would come out and they'd come out of their car, you could just see the dog's eyes and the
Right.
nose. And he's watching
Right.
to a T where his handler is.
Turning on our lights, the old Unitrol controls
God.
would click when we had our ambers on or our front and rears on. My dog would key to that, and
Okay.
he'd go bonkers in the back.
Really?
Oh, he'd go bonkers. I couldn't even transmit on the radio because he was barking so much. Because he knew we were doing something. He knew we were going on a stop. He knew we were going out on pet contact, whatever it was. Sirens, good Lord, I couldn't hear anything. It was horrible, but great. I mean, I lost hearing from that dog. I know I did.
Well, yeah. I was. What was it? Yes. Last week where were we? Where were we? Giants game, maybe something like. I don't know where we were. No, we were at the house, and you were saying something about your hearing. And Jenny goes like, it's because of the the gun. You shooting guns. I'm like, no. First of all, in our training, we freaking wear earmuffs.
Right.
And then the second part is like, it was probably Kai barking in his goddamn
Well, my
ear.
right ear from my dog, my left ear from my earpiece.
And that's what I
right?
told her. I said, my
Yeah.
left ear, my hearing is so bad compared to my right.
Oh,
And then every time I go to the doctor's like, this is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is just what it is. We see it all the time.
100%.
So now you have both, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
and
Jab,
then
jab.
I make it worse, and I become a motor officer.
Oh, so that was after K9.
Yeah. So when I lost my dog, the chief at the time, Gary Missile, was amazing. He told me,
kid.
yeah, he was great.
Solid dude.
He goes, I'll give you another dog right now. Let's go down and pick him out. And he goes, but don't. And I'm like, why? And he goes, because you're a good cop. You're a good person. You're going to get promoted. You get a dog. You got 5, 6, 7 years with that dog that I'm going to require of you. So good advice, solid advice from a solid chief who I love to this day.
Right.
Took his advice, waited. So other things come up in departments.
Sure.
we didn't have corporals or anything like that at the
Okay.
time. So I was just, I was an FTO. I was a range master. I was doing all that stuff. Actually, before motors, I became a SWAT team member.
Oh.
Yeah.
So was that just a Burlingame SWAT team, or was that a county SWAT team?
At the beginning was a Burlingame team only. We were the first in the area to start a SWAT team. I think in 75,
Okay.
Burlingame was the first SWAT team.
Okay.
So at the time we were by ourselves, and then eventually as we went through, we merged with several agencies in our area, and we became what was it, North Central Combined? I forget what we called ourselves, but
Yep.
yeah, SWAT was great. I was a grenadier, gas guy, entry team. That was amazing. Got me into the best shape of my life, I think, because you had to.
Yeah.
You know, and still I wasn't in the greatest shape, but I made it and went through a great school at the FBI and some former Navy SEALs. Pretty cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But all this stuff is happening, and I'm like, okay. SWAT for us was kind of like, maybe we get a call out once a month.
Okay.
You know, we weren't being used on every single warrant service. We weren't doing everything like full-time teams are doing.
Right.
And we were a part-time team, so you get the call at 2 a.m. You just got off of work. You got to get up and go. You're not, in service already.
Right.
So SWAT was great. Learned a ton from that. Learned a ton. Met some great dudes. And then became motors, man. Yeah, Jesus, that was the best.
Did you have a lot of fun doing it?
It was the most stressful class I think I've ever been through.
Okay.
Because I'd never ridden a motorcycle.
Ever?
Yeah, Keith Tamura, you're one of your training
my first
officers.
FTO.
Yeah.
Yep.
Keith taught me the basics.
Okay.
Fell over tons of time, almost broke my foot, learning how to ride, whatever. It was good. Went to Moffett Field for San Bernardino's motor school.
Okay.
And your former cohort, Jeff Rodriguez, was one of the master instructors there.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's how I know Jeff.
That's how you know Jeff.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Good dude, solid guy. 2 weeks of that class, crashed going down to Santa Cruz. Yeah, my wife knows, so it's not a secret.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was like, Tariq, cut it, please.
Yeah,
Right there.
it's those that have crashed and those that will crash. Those are the two types of motorcycle riders. So
always we're gonna crash.
Yeah. No, I crashed. We were doing our long ride and crashed up on Highway 9 going down to Boulder Creek to Santa Cruz. That's our long night ride.
Okay.
Hit some gravel, bike slipped.
Yep.
And flipped me off, and I went down the side of a hill. Blacked out. Don't remember any of it. Got up, looked up the hill, and said, "Hey, how's my bike? Is it okay?" Ran back up the hill. They're like, "Holy crap, dude, you all right?" I'm like, "I'm fine." Just dusted off, kept riding.
It was that easy.
At the time, I didn't want to. I'd been working my ass off to make that class. I'm like, I'm not quitting.
Right.
I don't care if my arms are hanging. I'm going. I'll ride with my feet. I don't care. But I did. I passed it. That was a huge accomplishment. And motorcycle, if you've never ridden, you have.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
And it's dangerous, man.
Yes.
And people just don't see you. And enforcement riding versus regular riding is completely different.
Because you're looking around constantly.
And we're going after people, balls to the wall fast.
Right.
To catch up from a dead stop shooting radar or something.
And you're having to rely that. I think one of the things I learned really fast, it's not the motorcycle lists that are the problem.
Right.
It's the motor.
100%.
It's the car drivers who are just not looking.
Yeah.
They're like, now they're on their phone. But back then, they were playing with their radio, looking at the person in the car with them. And it was just constant accidents.
Yeah. I learned a lot. But I only got to do it for a year because I tested for sergeant during that time. Once I got selected as a sergeant, I had to give up my motor position. So once getting promoted, though, I was back to patrol.
Yeah.
And I bid for weekends off, so I worked the front side of the week with the senior officers on graveyards. So that was a whole nother fun challenge.
What year was that?
That was probably 2006.
So I want to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a really tough situation that happened. I don't remember what year it was. We talked earlier about David Chucuti.
April 25th, 1998.
So I knew we passed it, but I think it's something we should talk about. For those of you who don't know who Officer Chucuti was, he was an amazing human being, an amazing father. I grew up with their family. His namesake, Dave Chucuti, who I grew up with, going to Green Hills, Taylor. I didn't go to Mills with him. He went to Mills. I went to Cap. But my senior year, probably was one of the hardest years for me, just because I was connected with the family. I wouldn't say that we were best friends. I just knew him. I was connected with him. Obviously, when you go to high school, everything kind of goes.
Yeah.
But you were around it.
Yeah. Dave, first of all, was recruiting me for years, trying to get me to stay with Millbrae, and had a huge impact on my life. I knew Dave, Gail, Ricky, Davey, Johnny. I knew them all. They were very young at the time. Dave would be, I call him the ghost, because we would have fights at a bar in the north end of our town, south end of Millbrae, fights almost every weekend, and we'd always be calling for help, mutual aid. Yeah. Well, it was Mr. K's at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there would always be fights. They'd shove their fights outside and close the doors, and we'd have to go pick up the pieces. But remember several times that I'd be like, "Who's that?" "Oh, that's Dave." He'd just show up, man. Didn't answer up. Just show up, help us, get some licks in maybe if he had to, be gone.
Yeah.
The ghost. I remember a high-risk stop I was on a countywide roadblock. I don't even remember what it was for, but I pulled over a car, and my guys didn't get there in time. Had a cover officer, though, didn't know who it was. It was Dave. And he came to me and goes, "I got you, buddy." I mean, that's who he was. One hell of a cop. Even better father, I think. Even better human being.
Yeah.
I have so many fond memories of that man. And the day that he was killed, I had just gotten off of work from Graves at Burlingame, and I probably drove past the scene right before it happened. I don't know. It was.
Can you give a little bit of a snippet? Because
Yeah.
I'm hoping in the near future I'm going to have Sean Graham on here.
Yes.
And obviously he's involved in it, and you can kind of just give a little bit of what happened. You
Yeah.
mind telling the crowd?
As I know the story, and you might hear a different version from Sean. Sean had picked up this vehicle in San Bruno where he worked for a registration violation, and it was acting somewhat suspicious. This is how I remember. It's been years. Followed the vehicle, I believe, onto southbound 101 from San Bruno, and when he effected a traffic stop at the Millbrae off-ramp, he was confronted by the driver, who got out of the vehicle with an AR-15 assault rifle. Sean initially tried to tell him drop it. Guy advanced on Sean. Sean retreated, took cover, tried to get away from what he knew was a deadly incident coming because he was outgunned. Took cover, called for help. And when a call for help comes out from us, from an officer, we scan each other's channels. So if I'm in Burlingame, I'm scanning Hillsborough, San Mateo, Millbrae, trying to scan CHP or the sheriff's office.
Yep.
So we hear, if it comes out, we hear a call for help. Well, Dave was watching, I believe, his son's baseball game up at Taylor Field, working motors that day from Millbrae, heard the call, jumped on his bike, said, "I'll see you later," and took off. He came eastbound on Millbrae Avenue and jumped into the oncoming lanes of traffic because he knew he had to get to the off-ramp from southbound. Came the opposite direction, came up on his bike, saw the guy, I believe, trying to locate Sean, who was in a canal, and engaged him with a pistol. And as I understand the situation, Dave got off a few rounds as the suspect squared up on him with the rifle and pointed the rifle. Dave got off a couple rounds, actually struck the suspect, I believe, partially struck him before he was shot and killed. The suspect's first round, I believe, hit Dave in the throat, took Dave down, and I won't get into the details because I love that family more than anything, and I love him. But what that suspect did to Dave was absolutely terrible after he had hit him with the first round.
Yeah. We don't need to get into
We don't need to get into that. Our guy Sean, who in my opinion is a hero because you stand up to something like that. I'll never question anybody's decisions. I wasn't there. I love that man, and he survived it. He had a tough go of it as well, and I'll let him tell his story. But any trauma like that, it's a lifetime. We felt it not even being there. I got the call from one of our dispatchers, and she said, "You need to come back to work." And I said, "Why? I just got off."
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Dave was killed." And I'm like, "Dave who?" And I'm like, "Dave, we don't have a Dave." I'm like, "Dave was killed? Who? Dave who?" Right. And she said, "Dave Chucuti." And I screamed. I'll never forget it. I fell to the ground. And I screamed out loud and started bawling. And my wife came out and she looked and I said, I got to go. Dave was killed. She's like, Dave who? I go, Chucuti. And that was it. We all went back to work. We all tried to help. We were in charge of the investigation and helping the coroner and the sheriff's department and the DA. It was devastating.
Yeah.
That was devastating. I will never forget from weeks after sitting next to people, guys who were rough and tough and badasses, holding our hands outside of our cars crying, talking about Dave, crying and thinking about his family. And I was honored. Most people would think this was strange, but we set up a 24-hour guard on his house for Gail and the boys. And I would volunteer as much as I could. So just send me there, I'll go. And I had my dog at the time. And I would never forget, I was parked in front of the house and just respecting their privacy. And Davey came out. And I was like, hey, buddy, trying to keep this face. And he was so strong, this young man. I remember sitting, I said, come on. He goes, Zach, hi? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can I come in? So he sat in the front of my car and we were just BSing. And I didn't want to bring up anything. I just said, man, I love you guys. And the amount of strength you're showing right now, just remember, you're the man of the house now.
Yeah.
Okay. And your dad would expect you to do things. And I'll never forget that night sitting with him. And it was just a matter of him just being around us, I think.
Yeah. Having you guys support him.
Yeah.
Family. I mean, I don't remember too much about the situation. Obviously I know the story.
Yeah.
Hearing it.
Sure.
Over. And then we were still in high school. We were about to graduate.
Yeah.
And I remember, just the amount of support that family got, the amount of support Millbrae PD got, the amount of support that they got from not just you guys, but from everybody. I mean, I remember people from San Bruno supporting them, coming up to the house and leaving stuff. I remember the flowers that were left on the side of the road. I mean, it's still there. The cross is still there.
And you know who takes care of that?
Who?
Gabby.
Really?
Gabby goes out there and changes the flag, and he changes the Peace Officer Memorial flag when it starts to get worn out.
Dude, that is, I didn't know that. And I mean, kudos to you, Gabby. I don't know if you're watching this, but
You're the man, buddy.
Dude, great job. Keep it up. This is kind of why I wanted to do this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't really understand the day-to-day of a police officer.
He left that baseball field watching his children and with his wife and never came back.
Right. Like, just take a second and think about that. Like, not you, obviously, we think about it all the time, but to people listening, I mean, these guys that are going and doing these jobs, even back then, was very risky.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I want to say that it's 10x, if not worse, for these guys, that they leave their homes. The ladies too, I apologize. Yeah. Any police officer who leaves their home, gives their partner a kiss, gives their kids a kiss and hug. The true belief of, like, I remember Jenny always saying, okay, I'll see you when you get home. And I always said, see you later. And like, it was something that I had to ingrain myself in saying, not saying bye.
Right.
Because bye was an end to something.
Right.
And I remember just when I first started, I would say, okay, love you. And then I don't remember who it was. It might have been, I'm trying to think, it was Roger Rouse, who was one of the police officers in Broadmoor with me. He was a reserve. Great guy. I love you, Roger. You're quirky, but he was one of those guys that, good cop, just was there to be a reserve, and he had other things going.
Sure.
I remember we were sitting and talking, and he was like, Dave, when you leave the house, what do you say? I said, I love you. Love you, G. That's kind of my thing.
Yep.
And he's like, from now on, I want you to say, I'll see you later. And I was like, why? Like, because I didn't think about, because when you're a young cop, you think you're fucking invincible.
Right?
Oh. Invincible. I always say invisible.
We are invisible.
Invincible.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things that you just don't realize that something could happen. But we don't think about that.
But this was, so as we lead into what happened to me, this was a big thing for me to overcome.
Yeah.
Was the bubble, man. I'm in this bubble for all these years as a head range master, a SWAT dude, right?
Yeah.
Badass canine officer, all these things, right?
Sure.
defensive tactics guy, a
Oh, I
less
remember.
lethal instructor. I was all of that,
Everything.
dude. I was like, nothing's gonna get me.
You were the epitome of a cop.
I was very fortunate.
And you were, I mean, I will say to the day, and I said it in the last podcast, best sergeant I've ever had. And no knock to anybody else. I will say the only person that compares to you was Nacho Reyes.
Yeah, I know Nacho.
And I think Nacho taught me to grow up. You taught me how. I was still young when I worked for you.
Oh yeah, dude.
27 to 29 years old. I was still a baby, and I think what you did is you taught me how to be a police officer, a professional.
Yeah.
And Nacho taught me how to be a street cop.
Yes.
In a way that I never thought I would ever be. I thought I was just going to, before I worked for you and when I started Broadmoor, I was like, I'm going to drive around. It's going to be this, that. And then I remember working with Nacho one day. He's like, okay, now I'm going to teach you how to do things. And he taught me how to just see things.
Right.
So, I've always said there's two types of sergeants. One that teach you how to look and one that teach you how to listen.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point.
Right. And to me, Nacho taught me how to look at things. You taught me how to listen and take a moment.
Right.
And, coming from Broadmoor, which is smaller than Colma.
Whoa. Well, that population.
That population
it's very
dead.
Quiet population.
It's very dead. No pun
Everybody's
intended.
dying. Everybody's dying to live there. But I'm fucked.
But if you don't know Colma is like 90% cemetery, 10% homes. So everybody's dying to visit. But
so bad.
Oh God, that's so bad.
It's so easy though.
It is such a
low hanging fruit, baby.
I love you guys.
Yep. Colma's
Sherwin and
badass.
Josh, I love you guys. I think again, we're going back to it is that the seeing and hearing, and that's something that I think we'll get into when we talk about your situation.
Yeah.
So obviously, Officer Chucuti, rest in peace. We love you and your
David.
family. I have been speaking with David.
I know this.
Oh, did he tell you?
I call him Davey, but
okay,
that's how we
it's
know
hard,
him, right?
Because David is his dad. And
Yes.
So I've been talking to Dave, and I
Yes.
don't know if he reached out and told you.
No, but I've seen your interactions.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I reached out to him and said, hey, if you'd be interested in talking about the story and about living this life now.
Oh my gosh.
And this would be epic for me.
Oh.
Especially that I've known the guy for so long.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're best friends. I would say we're close friends. We've confidants. We know each other. We respect each other. But his story coming from the other side, I think is going to be really important for families that are still healing from tragic situations.
Well, see, that's something that we don't consider when we're out there doing it.
Yep.
Is who's at home, how they suffer. When we come home and tell them that we were in a running foot chase or man with a gun call or pursuit or whatever, right? We're badass cops, right?
Yep.
We think of that like, oh, that's cool. We don't consider, and I didn't consider it until recently when my wife finally opened up and told me, every night that you left, I cried a little bit. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, I didn't know if you were coming home.
Yeah.
She goes, I never told you because I didn't want you to be thinking about me.
Sure.
But I was definitely concerned. And I didn't know that until recently, that her concern was every day.
Yeah.
Every day she lived with it. She encouraged me. She always wanted me to be a cop.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was taking that toll on her.
It's interesting. I never asked Jenny about that. And that might be a topic I bring up to her after we finish this podcast, because she never really talked about it. And I don't know if it was because she, like Rock, she just felt like that wasn't, and I don't want to say that wasn't her place because that's the wrong way of saying it.
Well, it was more of not being a distraction.
Right. Because they knew that, we had to be hyper-focused.
Yeah.
I remember working, and anytime I had a downtime, I just text her. Hey, I'm here. I'm good.
Yeah.
Lunch, always.
That's right. You guys had cell phones. We had to go find a payphone.
Rotary phone.
That's how old I am.
Yeah. Payphone.
Yeah, payphones. Those of you that know, probably a small percentage of the population now.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to pause this for a second.
We had to call into our dispatchers via 911 with important messages.
Oh, my God. Okay, first of all, we have a special guest sitting in the back. His name is Zen. He's 10 years old. He's
What up,
my
Zen?
neighbor son. I love the kid. Zen, do you know what a payphone is? Yeah. You do. Have you ever seen a payphone?
On TikTok or otherwise?
In a movie.
In a movie.
Ah!
Hey, at least he knows. I give you props,
Yeah,
brother.
we're going to give
props,
you a clap on
props,
that. Come on.
Yeah, for sure.
Crowd,
For sure.
Can we get a clap, please?
Definitely.
We need to give him a clap. Come on.
There we go. Yes, there we go.
Zen for the win.
It's
Good job, buddy.
It's so funny. It's so funny how I remember that. Hey, come in landline, call me landline. And we're like, oh shit, where's the nearest payphone?
That's so crazy.
Well, they, like if you had a long-winded dissertation that you weren't supposed to put on the radio, a dispo for a call or something. This is before computers in the cars and everything.
This is crazy.
I used to have my write reports in pencil, buddy. That's how old we are.
Oh my god!
In the car, handwritten reports.
I didn't even know we were going to go this road, but this is a great conversation.
No, it's all right.
Let's
it's
do
all
it.
part of the experience, It's all part of the. It's all part of the segue into who we were and who I was at the time,
right?
And where it ended up leading. But yeah, I mean, the experience of being a cop for me was super rewarding, and at the same time, the most tragic thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah,
the most tragic thing.
Yeah,
and you become a police officer to help people. And that sounds corny and it sounds canned, but why else would you want to be out there?
Put your life on the line for somebody else.
I don't know any of the people that we go to. They call 911. I don't know you, but I'm willing to come and take a bullet for you if you're in danger.
Right.
It's a special breed of people that we are, all of us in blue.
100%.
Same with firefighters, same with medics, same with everybody who tries to fix and help people.
I think that's a really important point. It's, we're talking about law enforcement, obviously, because that's what we were.
Right.
But it really spans, from us to fire, medics, nurses, ER doctors. I mean, and then you go to the military. You got military doctors. You got
absolutely.
I mean, the guys that are going out of the country to fight wars that have nothing to do with us, to protect us. And protect our rights.
Yeah.
And, obviously there's a big headline thing going on right now with one of the country singers. And that's, that's another conversation we can talk about down the road. We don't want to roll down the politics road, but I think it's important that, that conversations are happening, whether we agree with each other or not. Right. And there's a lot of people who don't like police officers.
Sure.
And they love firemen because firemen get to come and save.
Yeah.
And we get to save.
And they're good cooks.
And they're great cooks.
Yes.
And their fucking recliners are the best in the industry.
And their big screen TVs with their Dolby surround sound TV systems.
Their gym is...
Their pool tables.
Okay, can I just break for a second? I was in Chicago this past weekend.
This is terrible. I love you, all of my friends at Central County Fire.
He's lying.
He's making fun of you. I spent more time at Station 34 than I did in my own police station. I'll just say that.
Best
love you guys.
report writing room ever.
Amazing.
It was great.
Yes.
So really quick, break from our story, but I was in Chicago this past week.
Scattered, bro.
Scattered, totally scattered.
100.
Chicago, great city. Went to my first game at Wrigley Field. Was
that's amazing, bro.
So we get dropped off like a block away. We're walking through this street, and it was pretty cool. It was walking directly into the field. Make a left turn on the main street. I don't remember what it was. And right at the corner,
Firehouse.
Of
course.
And who's sitting outside with their pup, with their German Shepherd just hanging out? The fire department.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, I'm like, well,
America's heroes.
America's hero. Come on.
100.
Okay, so going back, I mean, we go to calls not knowing if we're going to help somebody or we're going to hurt somebody. If we're going to input, and I don't mean
that's a great perspective, though.
Right? Like, I don't want to say that we just don't know what's going to happen.
Right. They dictate what we're going to do.
Right. So what they do is how we react.
Yeah.
Right. So going into, and especially at me at a young age, I came to you at 27 years old.
Yeah.
And, I had already experienced a really bad fight.
Right.
I remember, I mean, I could talk about the story but that's not why we're here. But I remember it taught me to be super vigilant, and always expect the worst.
Well, it's the little things though. Like you're trained is like, don't pull up right next to another vehicle next to you. Okay.
Yep.
Well, why? Well, if they want to take a gun and try and shoot you, it makes it harder.
Right.
On the motorcycle, don't put down both feet. Don't step in the grease because if you slip, you could fall and dump your bike.
Right.
It's all these little things that we learn, and we become paranoid, if you will,
100%.
because that's sit against the wall with your head facing the door so you can see who's coming in.
Yeah.
Still do it to this day. We all do.
100%.
And why? Oh, in case the guys come in at 211 the place, right?
And 211 is
robbery. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Cop talk.
Come on.
Yeah. But yeah, all those things become ingrained in you.
Yeah.
And that's why you feel, okay, I'm prepared for this. My trainers, my experience, I'm prepared. I'm ready. Let's go. The next call it comes. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I am prepared. All of these years of experience, all of these trainings that I've done, all of these people I've spoken to, whatever, you're ready. That's not necessarily the case.
It's almost, I want to believe you're never ready. You're prepared.
Right.
You're prepared, but you're never ready.
No.
Because, like, I remember my first domestic violence call was crazy. I went in there thinking I'm just going to break up two adults fighting. It turned into a melee, like a full-on fight with the husband. The wife was attacking me, and because now we're going hands-on with, now it's so funny, not funny. It's so interesting to me, the dynamic of domestic violence call. One person calls.
Right.
The police wants help. You get there, they want help. We give them help, but it's not the help that they want or imagined.
Right.
And then their reaction is to defend their loved one, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
But they had forgotten that they called us to separate the situation.
To help them.
Right. And so when everything cools down and we're talking to them, and again, being so young as a police officer, I never saw my parents fight each other.
Exactly.
Were they verbally fighting? Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, my parents fought all
marriage.
the time. Marriage.
Right.
But to see a physical fight and then to see the kids that were involved, that made it even worse.
Yeah.
And the little ones looking and screaming because they see a cop grabbing their father or their mother.
Right.
And how do you explain that to a kid? And so those are the kind of situations where, we talk about PTSD and PTSI. These are things that
Cumulative.
It's cumulative. It's never just one thing. There's one thing that breaks the camel's back. Always. To me.
No, I totally, that's what my incident was.
Yeah.
And I think it was the culmination of 20 some odd years in uniform, seeing all of the world's horror.
Right.
Even in small little Sleepy Burlingame in San Carlos. That's what got me.
Yeah.
More than the actual incident that Dale and I went through.
Which we're getting to, so don't worry.
Sorry.
We're kind of scattered here, but I wanted this podcast not to be just about the situation.
Yeah.
It's about the cumulative, which brought us to acknowledging the fact that we have PTSD, PTSI, and anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. And so, I worked for you from 2007, 2009. Great time.
Sure. I don't remember.
I know you don't
FCRS. Can't remember shit.
Yeah. I like that one. CRS. I'm going to remember
Can't
that.
remember
I love
shit.
Then I left 2009, and you still were sergeant.
Yeah, I mean, my incident was 2010.
So let's go
shortly
back.
after you left.
Yeah, shortly after I left, and I remember getting the call. And I know this is going to be hard to talk about, so we're going to take it slow.
It's okay.
The date was
August 16th, 2010 at 20:40 hours.
So 8:40 p.m.
8:40 p.m.
Why don't you tell us the story? Take your time.
Yeah. No, it's good. This is therapeutic.
Good.
I've told it a few times, and it helps to, I guess, air it out, if you will.
Yeah.
So it was a Monday night, I believe. Dale and I, Dale Wild, who was my partner who saved my life, and you'll hear the story in a second. I was coming back from a weekend of softball with my kids, exhausted, sunburnt. Dale was coming back from his weekend. There was a local convenience store that we used to hang out with each other across the street. And what we call an 87 is when our two police cars come up alongside each other and we go window to window, and we can have a cup of coffee, BS, talk about everything. And that's exactly what we were doing. Beginning a shift after briefing, just catching up. Hey, man, how was your weekend? He knew I was coaching. He knew that my kids were playing. He knew how much I enjoyed it. And we were just literally having a cup of coffee, BSing. So I think it was around, it was 8:35-ish, I guess. We were just sitting there. The call came out of a 5150. And for those of you that don't know, a 5150 is a mental crisis. Somebody's going through crisis where they're a danger to themselves, others, or gravely disabled. So a mother had called 911 saying her son had forgotten to take his medication, and he was destroying his bedroom. So it was Dale's call. It was his beat. He answered up, and he looked at me and said, hey, my cover's coming from the north end of the city. Can you just cover me? I'm like, sure, let's go. I mean, it's just like any other 5150 call we've had, hundreds, thousands maybe in our careers, unfortunately. And that's a lot of the story is there's too many of them. But we rolled. It was about 3 blocks away from where we were. I arrived first in front of him. The mother and her friend were out in front screaming and yelling that he was destroying everything in his room. I said, who's he? She gave us his name. I'll leave that out of this.
How old was he?
He was 20. So that's another part of the story that hurt my partner really bad.
I know.
So she says he's destroying the house. He's off his medication. He's bipolar, all these things. So, like, I didn't even really listen to her. I had focused down the alleyway. And I knew Dale was behind me because the jingle jangle of his keys.
He always, not to stop.
No,
this,
it's his trademark almost.
Trademark. I remember, and he used to make me do it the same thing, and I hated it.
So Dale not only is my hero, and there's a debt that I will never be able to repay him, but he was one of my best friends, still is. He's moved away. He's at peace. He's doing his thing now, and I'm so happy for him. But he was the dude I could tell anything to, and he could tell me anything. He was the guy who I'd say, Dale, can you help me? He put in windows at my house when I bought my house. He helped me build a shed. Working graveyards, coming to my house right after graveyards, staying awake almost most of the day doing these things for me. Shirt off the back, salt of the earth, amazing man.
My FTO too.
Your FTO, and it got you into some pretty good situations. Yes, I remember. I was your sergeant.
You were my sergeant at the time.
So I knew he was there. He was talking briefly to the mother, and I looked down this alleyway, and there was an apartment complex, 216 Myrtle Road. Apartment complex, alleyway that was it was just a little bit bigger than my shoulder width, terribly narrow. On the left side was the wall of an auto shop, tall 20-foot wall. You remember that?
Yep, I do remember.
The two-story auto shop.
Yep.
Okay, so we were on the north side of that. Their separated in-law apartment was at the very back, and that's where he was. So I turn, I start moving, flashlight, fairly well lit, wasn't terrible. I hear jingle, jingle behind me. So I know Dale's on me. I didn't have to look. We were on SWAT together. We knew.
Right.
Been through the doors together. Walking down the alleyway, I come to the corner of the apartment complex, and I can see a portion of the in-law.
Okay.
But I can't see all of it. So I peek. I'm like, okay, it's clear. I see the front door open. I go, hey, it's clear here. So as I start to come out from behind the corner and move toward the door, I see this silhouette to my right. And I see this brush and tree start rustling. And I turn and I look, and here's this 6-foot kid at a full sprint with a big-ass knife coming at me saying, get the fuck out of here, get the fuck out of here, screaming to me. So I go, oh, shit, and he had me. I was done. I just didn't even have time to react. So I remember yelling at Dale, man with a knife, and I pulled my taser, and I popped the taser round off. And you know a taser, when it hits and it's a solid contact, it makes a certain noise. It's a solid noise.
You hear it, yep.
But when you miss one dart, you hear the crackling.
Yep.
So I'm backtracking. I literally run into Dale, and I trip. Well, as I'm tripping going down, this kid's coming down on me with the knife. And all I hear is bang, bang, bang. Right here, his pistol. He was right on me like he was supposed to do, right? Like he was covering me, and he put 2 shots into the center mass and got the kid once in his arm. Kid drops at my feet, knife goes sliding under my leg. And I remember I look at Dale, I go, what just happened? Are you all right? What just happened? And we could smell the rounds, and I could smell the blood. Okay, the burning blood, if you will. So I'm like, are you all right? I mean, we were just stunned. I'm like, I start putting it on the radio. I don't even remember what I put on the radio. I just said, man with a knife, shots fired. And I started giving orders thinking I was the sergeant, right?
Right.
And as it turns out, my orders that I was given was like made no sense to people because I was so in the moment.
Right.
And I look down at the kid who just tried to kill me, and he's gurgling. He's making the sounds, right? So I roll him over. I shove the knife away. I roll him over. I hook him up, handcuffs, excuse me. And I roll him back over, call for code 3 medics, and I start trying to plug the holes. And I rip his shirt open. I start pressure on him, and he's done. He's gone, right? So I start CPR. And I'm pumping on this kid who just tried to kill me, trying to save his life. Oh. So no gloves, didn't have time for that. No preparation. So I'm mouth to mouth. I'm CPR. I'm pumping. And I asked Dale to go back and get the trauma kit from our car. I don't even remember if that made it back to me, but I was pressuring him. I took his shirt off, and I used that for pressure. And I was pumping away. I got him back a couple times. So didn't even worry about the arm injury. Just worried about the chest wounds. And at some point, it was all a blur. I can still smell everything. That's probably my most vivid remembrance of this is the smells. And everything that they tell us in training is you'll go to tunnel vision. Your auditory exclusion will happen. Your vision will get heightened. Your sense of smell gets heightened. All of it happened to me. All of it happened to me in a matter of a second. So working on this kid, I hear more rustling behind me. One of our officers, Jimmy Hutchings, who was one of the greatest officers I know, came running in. Roy showed up. One of our canine officers, Roger, showed up. The whole shift showed up, basically. And with all the, I say this as a joke for a little levity in the situation, for all the grief that those guys gave me as a sergeant, a young sergeant, working with them, being senior officers that night, they had me, and they had Dale. And Jimmy took it over, and Roger took it over, and they started working. So I'm out in front. My back's hurting me because I had fallen. I had scraped up my legs. Roy took over compressions and CPR for me, and I just walked out in front. And I'm looking around, and I'm looking for Dale. And I'm like, where's Dale? Anybody know where Dale's at? Well, I didn't know that Jimmy said, go sit in the car. So Dale was sitting in a patrol car just being by himself. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm a sergeant. I got to run this. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
So I start collecting myself. I start getting people where they need to be, making notifications, start kind of getting my head back on.
Yep.
All the while, I'm bloody hands, uniforms covered with blood, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Yeah. What just happened? Sorry.
Because you're still in that tunnel vision, right? Like, or like,
the adrenaline was surging to the point where I was trembling, sort of like I am now.
Yeah.
Just out of control, but in control, if you know what I mean.
I 100% know what you mean.
So fire shows up, medics show up, they go scoop the guy. I send Roy with them for any dying declaration, whatever. Kid wasn't conscious. And then the fire guys come up and they're looking at me and they're like, Jeff. And I'm like, yeah. I go, you guys okay? And they're like, what? And I'm like, are you guys all right? Is everybody all right? And they're like, come on. So they sat me in the front of the rig and got me a bottle of water and started helping me clean my hands off and tried to calm me down. I still owe those guys. I went back and tried to have lunch with them one day. I just couldn't do it. But it all settled down. Detective showed up. Mike Matucci, who's now chief, was a commander at the time. He showed up. They called in everybody to relieve us. Hillsborough showed up. They relieved the city because we were busy on this, obviously. And then we got sequestered. And I'll never forget what it felt like to be sequestered. And if you don't know what that means, when you're involved in an officer-involved shooting or any fatality, you have to be interviewed by the district attorney as well as your investigators. It's all part of the investigation and internal affairs review. So sequestering keeps you away from talking to anybody else that's involved. So I was placed in a vehicle. I don't know what happened to my vehicle. Roger took me, and Ed Wood was the chief at the time. That's a whole nother story, what I owe that man. Ed said, hey, take him over to the Hyatt. Just get 2 rooms and put him in the rooms, and you stay with him. So Jimmy stayed with Dale. Roger stayed with me. And I'm in a room, I'll never forget this, in the Hyatt where I spent my wedding night with my wife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was so weird, so surreal. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm literally covered in blood, and my uniform's torn. And I'm looking at my hands and stuff, and I'm like, what happened? And Roger's like, just breathe. What do you want? You want some food? I'm like, I can't eat. He goes, do you want something to drink? I'm like, I can't drink. And I'm sitting in this corner chair trying to process what the heck happened. And like, then I started feeling guilty that I'm not there doing my job.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So the whole thing transpired, sitting there talking, Roger's trying to make small talk. And God love him. He was in a tough position trying to make me feel okay.
Of course.
And that's impossible.
No.
Right?
Especially that you don't really remember or know what's happening because you're still kind of in this adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And your feelings, you're not sure how to feel. You don't even know how to feel. You don't know anything.
Right. Like,
and
what
he
happened?
can't talk to you about it.
No, he can't talk. He can't ask me about it, right? Because
Right.
then, it's a violation of the sequestering and all that. So
Right.
I'll never forget. He's like, Jeff, we need to make a legal defense call for Porak and get you an attorney. I'm like, oh, crap. Okay. So he helped get that through Jimmy, who was the POA president at the time.
Such a smart,
Such a great guy.
Amazing.
I'm so thankful he was there. And I made the call. And the call was, hey, I need an attorney. I've been involved in an officer-involved shooting. I'm not the shooter, but I was involved. So the attorney was like, we'll send, where are you at? Be there as quick as we can. And then the crime lab said they're coming up. And it was Jim Granucci, who was a retired chief of police, who was in charge of the crime lab. He showed up, and I knew Jim. And he walks in and he goes, hey, Jeff, you okay? And I go, I don't know. And he goes, okay. He goes, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I got to take all of your stuff. He goes, it's all evidence. He goes, I know you're not the shooter, but I got to do a GSR, gunshot residue test, which is residue testing on my hands. I said, well, I didn't shoot. Dale shot. He's like, okay, don't tell me anything about it. Just we've got to do our procedures. And I'll never forget standing up and having to be photographed by the crime techs.
Yeah.
As though I was
Like a criminal.
like a criminal, yeah,
Right.
or a victim,
Right.
And that was a very surreal moment. And then they said, okay, a piece at a time, we need to take off your uniform, your equipment, and we need to take it. So I'm like, okay, well, I have no clothes.
Right.
So at some point, somebody got me my clothes from my locker and brought them over, and I got changed. And once they took everything, we were just sitting there again, waiting for our interviews to start happening. So this is probably midnight at this point.
Yep.
And we're still waiting for everybody to get together. The DA's office, the investigator, Ivan was his name. I can't remember his last name, but I knew him from before. And I had to clean up.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that my PTSD gets me every time now is putting my hands in that bathroom sink, white bathroom sink, and scrubbing the blood off my hands. Every time I see it in a movie, every time I experience it or something reminds me of it, boom, I'm right there. I'm right back to that sink, and I'll never forget that moment. Like, holy crap, this is not my blood,
Yeah.
This is somebody else's blood, right? And then it started to sink in. Okay, I have this blood on my hands because I tried to save the kid that tried to kill me. What is going on?
It's so oxymoron.
Oh, it's so counterintuitive to what people think.
And
That's our job, though.
But see, I mean, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I knew all this. I knew the whole thing that happened and what you did.
Right.
And, a lot of people think, and not a lot, some people think we shoot and that's it.
Oh, so much more.
It's so much more than that. We shoot and we try to save their life, even after they just try to kill you.
Instantly.
Right. And
no
you didn't
hesitation.
without hesitation. You automatically did what you were trained to do.
Yeah.
Not in the middle of a time where your life was almost gone.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the biggest part of this story.
Yeah.
Because I don't think society understands how important it is that when a police officer shoots somebody, it's, on a distance, it's a little harder to, react fast to help them, to save their life.
Right.
We're not there to take their life.
No.
We're there to stop the threat to us, someone else, whoever it may be. But the fact is that the minute the threat stops, everything
We're
changes.
life-saving mode.
Now we're in paramedic mode.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that most people don't understand. And it's something that's really important. And I think to me, and I won't speak for you, I think that's the biggest part of the PTSD part.
100%.
Because, I mean, not the same. I remember I was in coma. Do you remember Tully?
Tully.
Vote?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think her name is Walbrook. Bach.
Wachtelborn.
Something like that. She got married to another officer.
Yeah.
I remember we were doing CPR on an older lady. And I mean, the feeling of trying to save somebody's life, no matter what the situation is a mind fuck.
Oh, it's surreal.
Because you're like, for me, I remember doing CPR and hearing the ribs. Always. And you're like, what is happening? This is not supposed to be happening. What? And I remember when I first was doing it and I looked at Tully and Tully's like, nope, you're good. Keep going. And we were, 45 minutes. And I remember when fire came and I was dripping because, we had the vest, we had all our gear. We don't take that stuff off to save somebody else's life.
Right.
And so I still have vivid images of when I had to do, CPR to people. So I can imagine for you, a guy comes at you with a knife that's basically, you are very lucky you even saw him because it was peripheral vision kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you had a split second decision and you went for your taser, which in hindsight, and I will ask you this.
Oh, yeah.
And we can talk about that next, but to go for your taser and not your gun is a decision in your mind that you did not want to hurt this person. You wanted to help him and stop the threat.
Yeah.
Or let's say stop the threat and then help him.
Well, and I think it was a combination of things that I knew Dale had me cover-wise.
Okay.
And as a less lethal instructor and a weaponless defense guy, my first instinct was to try the ladder of escalation in that split second. All right, try to tase. Boom.
Right.
And in hindsight, if I had it to do all over again, no, it's going to be straight to my sidearm.
Right.
Now, knowing what I know now.
Right.
But that was the moment, and yeah, I do kind of regret that Dale had to shoot, because that really hurt him, and he saved my life. But that was just part of it.
Yeah.
He had a son at the time that was 20 years old.
I remember.
And that really, I remember that being a very big focal point for him, was how much that comparison affected him.
Connection, yeah.
We it's weird. We were okay with the situation that we had to do what we had to do.
Right. It was your job.
The kid dictated what was going to happen.
Sure.
And all things being told, he wanted to die that night. He just didn't have the ability maybe, or the drive, if you will, to do it himself. So he forced us to do it.
Right. And that's, for those that don't know what, there's a name for that. It's called suicide by cop.
Yes.
And that's something that's really, for many years, has been an issue.
Yeah.
And, again, unfortunately, the victims or the suspects dictate what happens and how we react.
Yeah.
And, when we go to a call, the last thing I'll say, I never, ever wanted to pull my gun out.
Well, if we go to every single call and think every single thing is going to try to get us, we're going to be basket cases for our career.
Throughout our career.
You will not function.
Correct.
But should you be prepared and ready for that?
100%.
We all are.
We all
were.
Yeah.
So
the investigators come, they
Yeah.
take the pictures, you change, you're washing your hands.
Brought down to a conference room to be interviewed. And
At BPD?
At the Hyatt.
At the Hyatt.
They got a conference
Okay.
room, yeah. And
All
that
right.
was very, very strange, being read my rights. Even though I wasn't necessarily a suspect in anything, it was very surreal being read my rights as a police officer. But that's part of the process.
So they gave you Miranda rights.
Gave me my Miranda rights.
And that's like, everybody, if you don't know what Miranda rights, it's the whole saying that the
Rights remain silent. Yeah, anything you say can and will be used against in a court of law. All those fun things. You don't even remember, do you?
I do remember.
Do
but
you remember?
I was waiting for you to do.
We had a card.
Yeah,
we
had a
read
card.
off the card.
I read off a card because
Yeah.
I didn't want to botch it, especially when you get it.
Go to court.
Go to court.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, you missed a word.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So Miranda was given.
Yep.
Did you have representation at
I
the time?
did.
Okay.
Yeah, she was. I forget her name. She was an amazing attorney.
Okay.
She told me flat out. She goes, "You're a victim in this, but you're going to be interviewed as a suspect. Just wave and talk." And it was probably one of the easiest interviews I did.
Okay.
And the DA's investigator was great. Didn't push. Didn't make it adversarial. Didn't just let's get through it. You need
Tell
to
me
go
the
home and
story.
rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, just tell me. And I did. It was probably a 15-minute interview. Dale did his, and I was taken back to the station after that.
Okay.
Roger took me back. Walk into the station, and graveyards, there's nobody there except for the dispatcher.
Two dispatchers.
In comms, in commo, and us.
Right.
So I walk in, and I'm like, holy crap, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right? Am I still working or what?
Right.
Plain clothes. I go to my desk, and I sit at my desk, and I'm like, okay, I got to do stat sheets. What do I got to do here? I got to approve reports.
Yeah. Get back to your.
Yeah, and then a couple officers, Norma being one of them, and a couple other, I think Kevin Thorpe came in. They were clearing the scene, so they came back to the station, and they saw me, came in, and we were talking, hugging. And then I thought to myself, there's somebody up in the comm center right now that handled that call by herself.
Yeah.
I need to go up and talk to her.
Give her a hug.
And I went up to our dispatcher, Marilyn, at the time, and
remember Marilyn?
Yeah, and she came up and she started crying. She's like, I heard you call for help. I heard you call the shots fired call, and then everything that came from it. But I never heard if you guys were okay. She goes, and I didn't know you were okay until just now. And I'm like, okay. And she was bawling. I'll never forget it. She was great. She did a great job that night. Didn't hear half of her traffic, to be honest with you, and what she did after the situation. But yeah, that's one thing that as police officers and first responders, don't forget about your dispatchers. They're integral, and it hurts them more than it hurts us sometimes.
100%. So they are way more sensitive than we are.
They don't get to see the end result of it.
They only hear and seeing, and that's the whole thing I was talking about in the beginning.
Yeah,
about hearing and seeing.
Yeah,
you heard the shots.
Yeah,
you didn't see the shots, but you saw the knife. But the minute the shots went off, all your mind went to is, oh shit, now put him in handcuffs and help him.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I go back to Nacho teaching me seeing, and then you teaching me hearing, because when you heard the shots, obviously you're going to react, it's right by your ears.
Right.
But it was a second until you reacted next.
If that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was instant.
It was instant. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that, we're trained to a certain level.
Yeah.
I mean, it then becomes, from that training becomes who we are as human beings.
100%.
And it shows that you and Dale right away put aside what just happened and who just tried to kill you both, specifically you, and went to help him.
Had to. Just had to. That was ingrained in us that we're to protect lives too.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're not there to take lives. The person who tried to get me dictated that situation, that outcome. So yeah, I remember just getting back to being at the station, not knowing what to do. And finally Ed Wood called me and said, hey, you're relieved. What do you need? Now, I forgot to mention that right after this situation, at the scene, I called Rock, my wife, and I told her, hey, Dale and I are involved in a shooting. We're okay. And I was so quick about it. I don't even remember what I said after that, but she's like, okay, what do I do? And I'm like, just let my family know. And that was the last I talked to my wife. So I'm leaving the station, and I'm like, okay, where's my truck?
Right.
It's like
so lost.
One of 4 cars in the back lot at the time.
It's there, but
yeah. And I get into my truck and start driving, and I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I going? I drove home, don't remember it. Got home, went into my wife's room and grabbed her out of bed and gave her a hug and cried a little bit and told her what had happened. And then went and hugged my kids. And then I sat out in the front room, and it was the most odd thing. I was like, I'm hungry. I hadn't eaten all night.
Right.
I was starved, and I'm like, I can't eat though. It's like, do I eat? What?
Am I allowed
do I
to
watch
eat?
TV?
Right.
What do I do? So I didn't sleep. I think I had a little something to eat and was in a haze. And the first thing I want to do is call Dale. Hey man, you all right? But we kind of just needed our space, and that was kind of how it all started. Was okay. Now it's a different thing.
Right.
Okay, it's done. Now what comes? FBI investigation, civil rights investigation, all those things that we know are going to come.
Right.
All right, now how long is this going to take?
What do you do?
Are we going to be cleared?
Right.
What do we do?
Yeah.
Right.
Where, do I stay home?
Yeah.
Do I go to the office?
Yeah, I want to go back to work.
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I didn't know how bad I wasn't good. You
Sure.
know, at the time, I'm like, I got to get back to work. 2 weeks. That's it.
Right.
Same with Dale. We're like, we're getting back to work. Well, we go see an occupational therapist, God love him,
Yeah.
who knows nothing about officer-involved shootings or PTSD. And they're like, well, you're okay. You know, just think about it and talk about it, and you should be fine. Blah, blah, blah. God love you. I love the occupational therapist, but specialty at the time
it should've
wasn't
been.
there.
Right.
So, yeah, man, for a couple weeks, Ed Wood called me and said, hey, it looks like everything's going to go good and be cleared, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome.
Want you guys to come back. And I'm like, I kind of don't feel good. You know, I kind of don't feel right. Then we did our debriefing as a team.
Right.
Lost it. Lost my shit, you know.
Really?
Yeah. But it was good. We needed to do that. And then the road started of therapy and how we get back.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you. You know, the first thing I thought about when you were talking about not being able to eat, or, you know, you were kind of in a haze, kind of in this place of like not knowing. Did guilt kick in then, or was it down the road where guilt kicked in?
Down the road more.
Okay.
I was angry at the kid. I'm like, why did you do that? Why did you needed help? Why did you do this? You ended
Sure.
now you're gone.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe that was what he wanted. I don't know, but guilt did set in eventually.
Yeah.
But I had a different perspective than Dale had.
Of course.
You
of
know.
course.
So yeah, it did play a role, but again, you know, once you start trying to get back and you start trying to figure out what you're feeling, right? You
Right.
know how this goes. The
of course.
therapy that I received from a good friend of mine, Mike Palmertree, saved my life. EMDR, massive therapy sessions, 2 to 3 times a week. Loved it. Threw myself into it.
Yeah.
Goal was to get back to work.
Right.
And after 2 years of doing therapy with Mike,
Yeah.
he looked at me and says, "You're not going back to work."
And
And I was like, "What?"
yeah.
He goes, "You're not a police officer anymore. You have to accept that." He goes, "You can't." And I'm like, "How? Why?" He goes, "Just you have acute PTSD, buddy." He goes, if you are faced with this same situation again, the outcome may not be favorable for you."
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me, the same conversation was taking place with Dale. And then he and I talked, and we were both agreed, hey, we can't. If we were to do this again down that same hallway, would we walk away this time again?
Right. Because your reactions might be different.
There's the hesitation. There's the,
yeah.
oh my God.
The
right?
1 second.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. It's less than a second.
Dave, it was so fast. I can't put a time frame on it. It was so fast
Yeah.
that my life turned on a dime.
I'm like, I got chills just thinking about it. And, you know, because society just doesn't understand. And I remember, I don't know, a couple years ago where the media was starting to go do scenario.
Right.
And I think KPIX might have been, or CBS. I don't remember. One of the stations
Yeah.
did it. And they realized how fast you have to react. And, you know, we sit here and talk about a split of a second. I mean, it's life-changing. That could have been your life and not his.
Right.
And eventually it would have been his life.
Right.
Because Dale would have
Yes.
probably done something. But to just think that, like, your life was about to be gone. I mean, of course you have acute PTSD. And, you know, we talk about you, but, you know, obviously I love Rock. I have, you know, to me, she's a special person for me and Jenny. We got to meet Alyssa this past weekend, which was super fucking cool. Juju, obviously I met a couple times. Talk about how it was for them.
Brutal. Yeah. It was brutal. My wife, her nickname is Rock, but she is Rock.
Yeah.
I should have lost her. She should be gone. Yeah. With everything that I went through and how I was and how I acted. Before I found the right therapy, before I found the right medication to help me get right and feel better, I was an animal. I was a beast. I was a jerk. I was everything. Outbursts, anger, temper, like you wouldn't believe. Sitting out in the backyard by myself. One night, drove away with my pistol in my hand and ended up over in the shoreline of the bay and was kind of ready not to come home. yeah, all those things that she put up with and dealt with. I love her to death. I wouldn't be here without her. And my kids, God love them, they saw a lot of things from me. They heard a lot of things from me. They witnessed a lot of behavior that at the time maybe they didn't really understand. My oldest did, and Juju, my youngest, she does now.
She gets it now.
Yeah, they get it now, and my goal now is to make amends in that regard. It's part of the recovery, right?
Yeah, of course.
My family too. At the beginning of this, my family's like, "You signed up for this. You knew this could happen."
Right.
Okay. And then why is he yelling at Thanksgiving dinner?
Right.
Why does he think we're talking about him? And I remember our first episode. When things happen and you get diagnosed with PTSD, I have a story that's just like you walking around with PTSD stuck to your forehead.
Yeah.
I walked into Pete's Coffee on Burlingame Avenue with my wife. And I walked in there and I looked at people. They weren't looking at me.
Right.
They didn't know who I was.
Oh, you were.
And I go, they know what happened. They know what happened. They're going to get me. They know what happened. And I'll never forget that feeling of my wife grabbing my hand saying, "They don't even know who you are, honey."
Yeah.
And I was just that paranoid and that worried. So it's all part of it.
Yeah, of course.
The culmination of it, the years of seeing terrible things, that's probably what hit me more than the actual shooting.
Yeah, I think, I think what happens is it's like there gets to a point in anything. It doesn't even have to be as an officer. It could be a work environment which was very hostile, and you didn't realize it until something bad happened, and then you realize, holy shit, I just worked in the company for 15 years, and they treated me like shit all 15 fucking years.
I can relate to that one too.
Yes, you can.
But that's a different story.
That's podcast number 4 with Jeff.
God, my life sucks. No, I'm kidding.
But it's accumulation of just all this stuff that adds up and adds up and adds up, and seeing kids get hurt, seeing kids hang themselves, I have vivid images in my head that are going to be ingrained for the rest of my life. And when I have a bad moment, that's the first thing I turn to. And I don't understand why I go to the negative and not try to figure out the positive, but that's just what we go through. Now, granted, and I'm proud of what you said, is that with the help of therapy and medication, which a lot of people and a lot of officers are afraid of this.
Sure.
And I think that kudos to the Overwatch Collective and Greg and those guys over there that are really, really doing something important, because therapy to me was just one part of the important thing. Medication is very important. It no longer, and it should never have been a stigma of, oh, you're bad, you're crazy because you take medication.
Right.
Well, when somebody has a stomach ache, they take something.
Right.
Whatever it may take. They have a headache to help the situation. And, PTSD is not fun.
It sucks.
It's horrible. And it was funny. I was driving back yesterday with Rodrigo from the airport, and we were talking about things. And I said, the PTSD is a roller coaster ride.
Oh.
There's the ups that are they could last for weeks, and then you have one dip, and then you go right back up.
Right.
And that dip could last maybe 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those things that you just don't know until you're in it.
One thing that I've learned, and I know you know,
Yeah.
the mind is the most powerful thing in the world.
Nothing smart.
And if it wants to trigger you,
it will.
It will.
Yeah.
If it wants to make you feel great, it will.
Yeah.
And that roller coaster is a real thing.
Yeah.
Walking into a building, smelling a smell, seeing something on TV, guess what? You're right back in it. You're triggered.
Yep.
And that trigger, I've had these moments where I'll come to work. You guys have probably seen me come to work. You do the same thing.
Yep.
You have a moment the night before. You have something that happens to you the day before.
Yeah.
You're triggered, and mentally you get exhausted.
Right.
So you come to work and you're exhausted and you feel crappy and you act crappy and you're not into things. You're not doing things because yesterday I thought about or I saw something on TV that triggered me. Yeah. And that's what PTSD is. It's a constant struggle to make it through every day. And the beautiful thing is, with help, with therapy, with friends, with talking, with family, with all of these things, there is a way out of it. You're never cured of it.
No.
You're never over it. You can't say PTSD is in my past.
No.
but you deal with it. You know how to cope with it. You know how to make it through your day. You know how to react.
Yeah.
You know how to say, it's coming on right now. I'm going to go for a walk.
Right.
I'm going to go on the tread.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do something that takes my mind away from it before I say something to somebody I love that's going to hurt
Sure.
them.
Yep.
You know, because I said stuff that I couldn't believe I said.
Yeah. I did stuff I can't believe I did.
Right. And it was unconscious, and it was like, it wasn't me.
Right.
And I still remember there was a night, a Thanksgiving dinner, where I was cleaning plates, and we were hosting at my house, and I was in the middle of it, man. And I didn't get my meds right yet. I was still kind of like figuring things out. And my brother and sister-in-law were sitting at the table. They were talking. They were whispering to each other. They were, doing stuff that married couples do, right?
Yeah, right.
And I turned around and I said, if you're going to talk about me behind my back, get out of my house. And my wife grabs me and she goes, what's wrong with you? And they looked at me like, what's wrong with you? We're not talking about you.
Right. And then it becomes a situation.
And I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk.
Right.
And I went out in the backyard, my little peaceful place. That's what PTSD is. Maybe not for everybody, but for me it was.
Yeah, I didn't have that. There was a couple things that I had. I couldn't be around a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
It was. I remember when Jenny and I were in therapy together, and I remember when I was told, and then it was like, I don't remember exactly, but there was a holiday where, Laura and Mike, when they have holidays, it's like
big.
20, 25 people.
Sure, yeah.
And it was constantly just overwhelming. And I remember prior to, I think prior to being diagnosed, I probably had it.
Oh, for sure.
But I didn't know what it was because I still was going to concerts. I still was around a lot of people and nothing reacted.
Mm-hmm.
But it was almost like a light switch.
Well, you recognized it.
Right. Because I started to get to a point where I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting really, upset about probably some of the stupidest shit in the world.
Right.
And then because I was angry and not focused on stuff, I started reacting by doing stuff to compensate for certain things.
Yep.
And drinking was definitely one of them. And growing up, I never drank. I mean, I think I got drunk on my 21st birthday at Dave & Buster's.
Party animal.
Yeah, 24, I think. And then I had my surgery and I couldn't drink. So I didn't drink. I didn't start drinking until
you became a cop?
No, I didn't even drink then. I never had to. I just, because that was not my coping mechanism.
Right.
And I think when it was probably 2016, 2017 when I got diagnosed, and then I started feeling really sorry for myself. That's another part of PTSD that is really fucked up. Is that you start to feel sorry for yourself. So you start to
want everybody else to feel sorry for you.
But then you don't want people to feel sorry for you because you don't want them, they don't understand. They'll never understand what I'm going through.
Right.
And that led me down a path that I, to this day, will regret and will always regret.
Sure.
Because unfortunately, it caused a lot of problems in my family, my wife, my marriage, my in-laws, my mom and brother and sister, caused a lot of problems.
Sure.
But the minute I got the minute life blew up and I got right on my medication and therapy, life changed.
For sure.
And I would say that going on now 3 years of being on this same medication, going to therapy pretty consistently.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need it as much because I have a little bit more control of my feelings, but I still believe that like every time I go to therapy, I feel like I'm a new person.
It's liberating.
Yeah.
Because you realize that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
In this struggle.
Yep.
There's many, many people like us that may or may not have said I have it. I find that I'm proud of it.
I am now.
Yeah. At the time, I was scared because I'm a cop. I can't be crazy, right? I can't be 5150, quote unquote.
Yep.
PTSD is not being crazy.
No.
PTSD is your brain chemistry has changed because of a traumatic brain injury or traumatic incident.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
Yep.
But that chemistry has altered your
Everything.
way of doing things.
I mean, everything. And the people around me, all my friends, I mean, Rodrigo's around me, Tariq's around me all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my days. Oh, and Zen too, he wanted me to make sure I call him out. It's one of those things that you just, every day is a new day. And every day could be a good day.
Yeah.
Every day could be the next day could be a bad day.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, you're still dealing on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And you've been with me now almost 6 months.
Yeah, February. Yeah.
February, so 7 months almost.
Yeah.
And we see each other every day.
Mm-hmm.
We go to ball games together.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of time together. And some of our days are good and some of the days are bad. But
And we know it.
We
see it.
We see it. And,
Yeah.
and the greatest thing, I mean, one of the greatest things for me now, this last 7 months, was having somebody near me who can see it
Mm-hmm.
and reacts to it
Mm-hmm.
without me having to say anything. And that's really helpful for me
Yeah.
because it allows me to like feel free for a second.
Yeah.
And then that reaction of, hey, are you okay? It kind of snaps me back out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is like, it really just takes somebody like, hey, get back into it. And it does help. It helps me at least. I'll speak for myself. I try to have my one days. And I remember a couple weeks ago, maybe a little longer, I kind of went on a bender. And I went 2-3 days of pretty heavy drinking.
Yeah.
And I realized, and the crazy part is the next day when I'm done, okay, back to work, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I've realized that is not the life I want. And so I need to face it on a daily basis. When I'm feeling bad, face it or ask somebody to help me face it and move on. And I think that having this podcast with you today, I hope has given you just a chance to air it out because I think it's important that you talk about it, not all the time, because that's never good. But every once in a while, it's nice to air it out and realize that what happened. You can't change it. And the only thing that comes out of this is that you yourself continue to live on a path of no guilt because you did nothing wrong, but heal yourself to a point where you're good for your family and everybody around you. And I hope talking about it, I know how hard it was. I know coming up to this podcast was not, the simplest thing to do. But I'm very grateful that you're willing to talk about it. And obviously I have love, respect. I don't even know how many other words I could come up to you and your family. You guys have been a big part of my life in the last 7 months. I mean, the story between you coming back to coming here is a story in itself. But I really just want to, thank you. I think the audience, and I'm going to speak for them, respects you and feels a part of what you went through. And I hope talking about this, you as an audience get to hear it firsthand of a police officer who has never done anything wrong and worked his ass off on the streets, protecting, a city that it wasn't crime-ridden, but you still put your uniform on, you still left your home, still gave a kiss to your wife, gave a hug to your kids, and without knowing if you're going to come back after. And so all I can say is thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing with Urban Paws, because I think it's really important that now you're giving back.
Yeah.
And
you've given me that opportunity, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think that you've taken it. It's yours, and you know that it's something that is important to me and Jenny, but it's also important to the community that we love.
Yeah.
We love our first responders all the way up to our nurses, our vets. They deserve to be treated with the most respect you could give anybody. The only other profession that I think compares to us is teachers.
Yeah.
And I think teachers don't get enough love and respect. But that's another podcast, and I don't want to get into that. But Jeff, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dave.
I love you.
Love you too, brother.
You've changed my life forever.
Same.
To our guests, thank you again. To our audience, thank you for being here. I'm just going to put a little side note. I hope there's going to be a podcast next week. I'm traveling all week next week, so it's going to be really hard. But if we don't see you next week, we'll see you the following week. So thank you for watching. Scattered Chaos Podcast. We're out. Not bad.